'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Soumyasanto Sen about digital HR, transformation, and people analytics. Soumyasanto Sen, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining me. You're joining us from Frankfurt, Germany. So it's evening there, it's morning here in Utah. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk with you today. And we're going to be focusing on your area of expertise, which is around digital HR, transformation, and people analytics. And we're going to be exploring those topics and what that all means for the world of work and the future of work. As we get started, I wanted to share Soumyasanto's bio with everybody. Soumyasanto Sen is an advisor and leader in digital HR, workforce transformation technologies, and analytics. He has more than 18 years of experience in this aspiring area, together with HRIS implementations, digital HR strategy and transformation, organizational change, use of new technologies, research and thought leadership across North America, Europe, and the Asia Pacific for large and mid-sized companies. Soumya ranks among the top global influencers and thought leaders in HR technology, transformation, and people analytics, and also is a well-known keynote speaker. As an entrepreneur, he's the founder of the management advisory firm People Conscience, based in Frankfurt, Germany. He is the author of a highly popular book, Digital HR Strategy, Achieving Sustainable Transformation in the Digital Age, and co-author of The Sustainable Organization, A Paradigm for a Fairer Society. Tremendous background, and I really appreciate all the expertise that you're bringing to the table as you join me in this conversation today. Thank you. And is there anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, you have covered it pretty well. So like a very crisp and very concrete bio on my side. I'm really, as I mentioned, like happy to join here with your podcast. And the interesting thing is my name is very unique. Like if somebody types Soumyasanto in Google, it's only me in the whole world. So that's that's the easy one. So people can easily contact me, and I'm available in LinkedIn, and they can find me anywhere like easily.
Perfect. Well, let me start by asking you a general kind of personal question, and that is, how did you find yourself landing in this area, in this field of digital transformation, digital HR, and all of those related areas?
So so let me brief you. So I have a technology background. Like I've done my master's in computer, and I spent a long years with consulting company, working with solution like enterprise resource planning or HRIS implementations for several big customers around the world. And what I feel from that time, like it's always a big challenge, because especially when you take the respect from the HR, from the HR function compared to other functions, it's always a big challenge in terms of when you say from the IT perspective, when you say from the digital perspective, because HR itself is also a cost center for overall the organization. So there is not many interest to invest a lot in terms of from the IT investment. And on the other hand, like HR is very much process driven. So they're not very much, if you see from the most of the process, we are changing definitely. But if you see from the past, most of the processes are very much like dedicated to the governance in terms of their interoperability, how they works, especially lead from the compliance perspective, lead from the from the regular operation perspective, and not from anything from the experience perspective, from the HR customer, whom the major one is the employees, and the managers, the leaders. So that's definitely lack a big thing, And then in the last few years, when the digital transformation coming into the space, not only HR, from everywhere. So I see it as a huge opportunity for organizations, including the HR, to deep dive into the space, And coming from that background, I can totally see how it's transforming. And I'm actually helping a lot of organizations and leaders to dive that into this group.
Well, yeah, that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing a little bit of that background and why it's so important, to be thinking about digital transformation, not just in HR, but across the organization. I'm curious what you've seen, over the past decade. Digital transformation isn't necessarily a brand new thing. It's been around for a while. People have been talking about it. HR information systems, HR analytics, those aren't brand new. It's been around for a while, but it's certainly picked up steam, and it's more prevalent today than it was certainly a decade ago, even 5 years ago. So what are some of the major trends that you've seen in the space, and how has it shifted over the last decade?
I think if we talk about the last decade, I think, as I mentioned, like HRIS is not new. So many of those companies and organizations have HRIS and solution from like recruitment, learning solutions are there, definitely there for a long time. But everything is evaluating, in a different way. Focusing more on the experience piece, which is experience from the employee, experience from the customer, centricity from the HR. So that is the biggest evolution that is happening, for the last 1 decade, if we see. And a huge growth also in the area like people analytics. Like analytics plays a huge role today in I think all the business functions, so does for HR. So I remember I actually joined in the analytic work stream, I think 7-8 years back in one of the companies when we diving into business warehouse or business intelligence, how we can use the data from also people data. So it's very immature at that time in most of the organizations. But if I see now, I think it's mature enough, because now people can see the value of using analytics in the space, not only for the HR, but actually when you deal with people data, it can resolve a lot of business problems related to which leaders are facing, whether it's a talent acquisitions or talent development or the talent retentions. That's the biggest one, but definitely there are more consecutive in terms of organization changes, transformations, and all those things. So the huge implications are there from the analytics, which is used by many organizations now. So HR, if I see HR analytics or people analytics become already a key functions for most of them. And if you think from the technology point of view, HRI is definitely there, but there is also a huge flow of new HR innovations, using of AI-based tools in learning or recruitment is a huge implication. We have seen a growth of numerous growth in the startups in this area of recruitment and learning. We have seen, they are evolving good in terms of making the process more, agile in terms of from the HR perspective, and they provide better experience to the employees and managers, and that's awesome. And that's still growing. It's still evolving, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that evolution is continuing to happen, and it's clear. If it wasn't clear 5 or even 10 years ago, if it wasn't clear that HR technologies and digital HR was going to be important, it's crystal clear now. And with so many organizations moving workers to a virtual environment and a distributed workforce, I think it's even more essential than it ever was in the past. So clearly having a digital HR strategy is important for the modern organization. It's going to be even more essential for the future of work and future organizations. But what do you see as some of the biggest current challenges with the transformations that organizations are trying to face? Recognizing that there's always a learning curve. There's always bumps and bruises along the way. But, a lot of organizations have been thrust into this transformation over the past year, whether they liked it or not, whether they were inclined to move as quickly, as they were forced to or not. It's been happening. So what have been the biggest challenges associated with that?
I see that there are multiple challenges, but the biggest challenge is that the organizations most of the time, the organizations lack the right strategy. And sometimes the strategy has been misplaced or misinterpreted with the operational effectiveness. Because like having a new system or having a better system in place, to making all your manual process into digitalized. So this is not only a part of the key digitalization approach for any business function or overall organizations, right? Because this is there from the long decades. Like we are doing this from long decades. If there's somebody who's working in IT environment, so these things we are doing, like when we are implementing enterprise resource planning, like 2 decades before, like that's the main objective, like how we can decrease the cost, how we can make process effective. This is there, so this is not new. So the major thing is the digitalization is like how you change also the people mindset, towards not only using digital tools, but also working effectively in terms of cross collaborations, in terms of making automated the process to make your time free for the work, which makes add more value, like adding more creativity, more innovation into the companies. So those are the biggest challenge, which I think when transformation coming around, because if we see like most of the digital transformation projects are focusing on implementing good solution, on good technology in the piece, and then lacking don't taking those pieces, which is important in terms of changing from the mindsets, changing from the organizational culture, changing from the aspect of the employee or the customer experience, which is very much lacking in those spaces. And those are the important elements, and everything have to be combined together. Then you can really achieve a sustainable way to transform. So.
Yeah, and certainly digital transformation, well, any transformation, any organizational change is going to be difficult. There's no doubt about it, and people are resistant to change. And that's even, when it's a relatively simple change. So when you're talking about systems and processes and technologies and adopting and adapting to those new technologies and then leveraging them for your organizational and HR strategies, that's some major change. That's some major shifts that have to occur in the mindsets and the capabilities and the skill sets of the people within an organization. So it's no wonder that it's an ongoing challenge for organizations trying to go through this HR digital transformation. I'm a professor at my university is in the middle. One of the major things that we talk about constantly from a strategic organizational standpoint is the digital transformation that's occurring across the university, not just in the HR space, but in all aspects of the organization. And, if that's happening, and if it's such a prevalent part of the ongoing conversation, the strategic vision and mission of the organization moving into the future, at a university, it's going to be important in corporations that are usually a little bit more fast moving and quickly adapting to the marketplace. So, I think that's really important to think about. And for any listener who, if you're in an organization, that this is important, that you need to be doing it, but maybe you don't really know where to start, or you don't know how to get people on board. What would you say to them? What are some of the first steps that can be taken as you're trying to help start the ball rolling and get your organization moving towards digital transformation?
I think I always prefer to suggest start with the problem, right? So start with the business problem, and the business case, where your business and company wants to go, from there, whether you want to change your own business model, are you really looking forward for a different way to going forward? That's the biggest things to start with, So once we have this clarified, it's easy to access, to what are the next priorities could be, and that's the important piece, because now the world is changing so fast, and there's so many changes across every different sector, industry, And also the changes like with the pandemic, which is also creating a huge noises and also challenges for the organizations. I think it's very important also to set the priorities, right? Priorities at the right time, because none of the organizations can do everything at the same time. Though, although many of them are trying, but it's not easy. So setting up priorities is very important here, and then have a framework in place, and then build up with the priorities and set the right strategy, from your short-term strategy, your mid-term strategy, and maybe a long-term strategy at the end, and so that you can have a direction to go forward. And that's the very important key piece, which many of the organizations lack, because building a strategy and roadmap is also a key challenge, because many of the organizations I've seen, like, they try to look what is available from the external point of view, like go for a model which is already there and used by other organizations. I would always rather ask and advise to see your own organizations, and if needed, create your own model or framework which fits you. Because it doesn't, like, one model doesn't fit all. So that's definitely the key point aspect here. And if you clear with that, I think that's easier to plan your transformation, than having the right people, see where the right biggest challenges there in terms of maybe having the right people in stage, and maybe not having the capabilities and infrastructure. So then you can also plan your budget in a way, because cost is definitely a big factor also, because a huge amount of investment is there in most of them when you do some innovation project or transformational project. So you will have to plan about your cost effectiveness. So all these are definitely important. And when you really set a strategy in a better way, you can really manage in a good way as well. And that's a very important key aspect here when you really start with the transformation. Start with your own challenge, not just relying on what is in the current trends, but rather your own.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership: Ordinary, Everyday Actions that Produce Extraordinary Results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Yeah, that's some great advice. And I think there really is a temptation for organizations and for leaders to just hop on the bandwagon, the latest trends. And looking at industry and looking at best practices to try to inform and shape the direction you want to take. There's value in that, of course, but just jumping on the trends is probably not going to suit you well. And your organization's unique. So even if other organizations are being very successful with a particular package or software or a particular approach, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. So you can't sidestep or find a shortcut to that transformation. You have to go through the difficult process of having those conversations, and like you said, figuring out really what your organization needs, where the gaps are, and what might be able to help fill those gaps. Having those conversations, those strategic discussions is going to be super important, unique to your organization, just like any other strategy or any other approach that you might be wanting to take.
Another point I want to mention it here, because I've seen in many organizations, I've seen within organizations, there are multiple initiatives from the digital perspective, So I don't see many of their functions are working as a cross-functional unit or cross-collaborating to each other. So I've seen also like a lot of organizations saying like we have different initiative, one by marketing team, one by our digital innovation hub, we have our HR different, finance different. So this is also a huge challenge at the end of organizations because it's bundled up huge cost. And we can see like, it has been seen like a lot of the work are actually done in a silo and also repetitive. They're doing the same work in a different area, and not only in the function, but also if you talk about global organizations, this is same has been seen when this has been initiative by a country countries is doing different initiative. They're not aligned on one single strategy. And this actually leads to a huge amount of increase in the cost and efforts and actually not a good direction for the organization. I think, and that's also one of the biggest things which is ignored in transformation project. They don't cross a line within the globally or regionally, like wherever it's applicable, rather than started by their own. And this is something could be very risky.
Yeah, that's another really good point. And you bring up something I think that's super vital, whether we're talking about digital transformation or any sort of organizational change, is that if we have initiatives that are siloed and we're not working in cross-functional teams and we're not getting out of those silos, we're going to have all sorts of inefficiencies. We're going to have all sorts of duplication of effort. It's a huge waste of time and resources when we're not coordinating and collaborating more tightly. So we have to get out of the silos. I get it. It's hard. People like their niches, their areas of expertise. People get defensive, people get boundary maintenance, and people want to control their little area. I understand that it's difficult to break that down, but to the extent we can get past the silos and we can involve people across the organization in these large scale changes, again, regardless of whether we're talking about HR digital transformation or not, I think that's what we really need to go for. And we need to work towards creating that kind of a culture, that kind of a mindset with our people. So let's shift gears just a little bit and talk now a little bit more about people analytics, because clearly digital transformation, there's many benefits to it, and digital HR has lots of benefits. One of the nice benefits is it can help you produce a lot of performance data and other data that can be utilized in order to better understand your people, your workflows, what's going well, what's not. Talk to us a little bit more about the current state of people analytics and kind of where we see that taking us to be able to drive more productive and effective organizations in the future.
Yes, I think it's pretty clear, like data-driven function. Any data-driven function is highly effective in terms of making better decisions, right? So, and it's same for HR, and because not only for HR, but also like if we talk about people's data, it bring you like the right decision also for the managers and the leaders, because they are at the end, they manage their talent, or manage their team. So I think if you talk about the people data, like whether it's from the person, like your performance data or your learning data or your absence data, like you can gather that and you can build an insight, which can really solve your big challenge, what you're really facing with your talent. It can really take a better decision with them, data-driven decision. Because what happened also with this people data in the past, if I compare with the past, a lot of the decision is made based on assumption, and based on the cases, which is the cases coming, So now if we talk about, when you talk about data, when you have a flow of data, you have your platform there, you can see, you can take a faster decision, but you can make an effective decision, which makes sense. But on the other hand, I have also seen some of the resistance to use people analytics, because there's a confusion that using of people analytics can actually lead to the human are not taking the decision, which is a wrong part. Because I always say analytics should be used, to making the decision better, but it doesn't imply that a system or algorithm or a robot or whatever you call as a part of AI take a decision for you. So this is not something which is meaningful, and this is not something I think most of the organization tends to go, but which is I see as a resistance, people are afraid of using data. Okay, we don't want machines to take decisions. But this is not the fact. So I think that's awareness and should be there within the people, and especially I've seen has been seen in HR functions because most of the HR peoples are not from the STEM background, so they lack those efficiency in terms of understanding technology, whereas like technology work together with human beings, So that's there, that's resistance is there. But I think at the end, it's a big benefit to everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. Data-driven decisions are important throughout the organization. Again, not just related to people strategy and HR issues, but all issues. Certainly that applies to HR. And just because, people might not be as comfortable with HR technologies or with the analytics skill sets, that doesn't mean we shouldn't utilize them. And it's certainly not, I think it's a logical fallacy to jump towards, we can't use people analytics in HRIS because we're taking the people out of HR. And, I read these articles and I hear people talking about this. I'm like, there's a point there. Like, we need to keep humanity in organizations for sure, but that's not what you're arguing. You're not arguing for removing the humanity from business or from how we treat our people. It's being able to make better, more informed decisions, which is to everyone's benefit, I believe. And really that gets me into the last kind of point I wanted us to explore together, even if just briefly today. And that is, what does all this mean for the future of work? We know that work is evolving, more distributed workforce. I could go on and on about some of those drivers and some of the shifts that are happening in the workplace. But in relation to digital HR and transformation, what do you see? How's that influencing the future of work?
I think the major challenge or change in the future of work, you already mentioned the hybrid work model. So the working model is going to change for sure. It's already changed, but I think even in post-pandemic world, it will be definitely going to impact a huge for the organizations, most of the organizations at least. When you say like changing in working model means also adding more flexibility, a new way of working in terms of that. Like, I think everyone can recognize, like, when somebody working from home or working from an office or a dedicated space is totally different, and that's a totally different environment, a new way of handling things. But on the other hand, it has some pros and cons, so some advantage, but also disadvantage as well, because that's why we talk like hybrid mode could be a best solution. So definitely working model is one area where you can see that new ways of working can change. The second point I will mention, which we also discussed during this podcast, we have to move from a bureaucracy world to humanocracy world. I think that's more effective, so to working in a more collaborative way, removing the silos, and that's a huge change in the culture, also change of new way of working, because the old working style and working habits doesn't going to fit into this. So this is also changing, and this actually going to help organizations in terms of the relevant transformation to achieve, but also a good culture where people feel more secure, trusted, and they're more flexible in terms of sharing thoughts, bring innovation. So this is definitely another key aspect, which is coming from this change in the world, which is coming definitely added advantage with digital piece. And the last but not the least is about the skills, upskilling and learning, which is also a very key aspect of any future of work or any organizations today. And I think that's also a huge, I would say, not in a good shape. If you say most of the organizations like managing the skills and then managing the competencies, based on that you plan your workforce, and plan your workforce mobility or workforce planning. So all these are definitely not integrated in most of the organizations today, and then which upskilling is needed, and which skills are going to obsolete, which skills are coming new, like what type of training we need to provide, how we can develop the employees, what are the career aspirations for the employees. All those things are there, but it's not integrated somehow. So this is something which is huge, going to change, because the organization have to apply this, moving towards more we call skill-based career, more skill-based career or skill-based talent management rather than old typical talent management based on their own different curve. So this is a huge change which is going to happen also with the organizations if we talk about future of work.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, it has been a real pleasure talking with you. The time has flown by and we've only scratched the surface. I'm sure there's so much more we could talk about, and you are welcome back on the podcast anytime. I'd love to continue to pick your brain about current trends and future shifts and things related to that. Thank you for joining me today. Before we close, I did want to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your business, and anything else you would like to say by way of final word on the topic.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think I mentioned like for me to contact me is very easy. Like you can find the best easy ways to contact me via LinkedIn, because that's the way I can easily reach. And I use as a LinkedIn as more like my personal contact point or database. So it will be helpful, like for easy to contact me. And anytime, like you can also see my articles, my book, also Digital HR Strategy, which I mentioned about a lot of things which we have talked today, so about the future of work, about the digitalization of HR, where it's going. So a lot of things has been explained there. So you can always grab a copy of that. And looking forward to know and learn and share more in the future, because that's my key motto for life, sharing and learning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really encourage listeners to reach out, get connected with Soumyasanto, and find out more about what he can do for you. Check out his book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
We are excited about the launch of HCI's new magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine designed to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We will be publishing issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Check out the first issue and let us know what you think.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.